I don't want to if I don't have to. So I'm excited. My name is JamesClancey. I work at Xibbon working on Xogot. Hopefully you've all seen it. Godot on the iPad.
Yeah.
Really exciting. Yeah, it's fun. So we just launched yesterday, so super exciting. And I'm going to talk on multiplayer today. But if you went to the workshop or the other multiplayer talk, we are talking on very different topics. Just throwing that out there. It's going to be I'm taking it from a different approach. So if you just went through one of those classes or you just did a tutorial, you've probably completed the tutorial and you're feeling really good. You've got a game, and it probably might not look this good. This is a template I downloaded from the Godot asset store, but you have that menu that is ready to go. It's got the host button, or you've got an enter an IP address and join, right? So everything getting to that point and how to properly do all networking, make the ball move, things like that. I'm not covering that type of things. I want to focus on what do you do from this point. You've got it, you're ready to go, but now what? I've gone through this. I've been building games forever. I used to even work on Mono Game way back when, and been working on VR games since the DK1. I kickstarted it and started doing game development when that came out. I was super excited for it. And I like multiplayer experiences, so I've always wanted to build. I miss couch games. We don't play couch games anymore. And it's like, I like that multiplayer aspect of actually playing things with friends. So multiplayer is something I've spent a lot of time and focus on. I wouldn't call myself a professional developer, game developer. I'm more of a professional prototyper. I love doing the prototyping and getting things figured out, and then I move on. So actually releasing games, it's always chasing that next high of the next project. But so we're gonna be here and we've got this. And now what, right? No one knows their IP addresses. Most people these days don't even know what an IP address is. Used to, but I'm guessing people don't. So I want to make it super easy. And so what do you want to do? Let's do some UDP. No one should have to jump into their game and actually manually type in an IP address. So I'm going to jump in and we're going to look at a game that same template. I started with it and I've added UDP to it. And we'll talk a little bit about how that works and what it does and some of the pros and cons. It's great if everyone's on the same network. UDP is going to be awesome. Everything in most networks, it's just going to work. And now automatically everything will automatically connect. If you're trying to do it on an iPhone, it's not going to work unless you fill out a form and then get Apple approval, add an entitlement, check a box in some hidden tab on their website, then you can do UDP. But everywhere else, it just works. So let's jump into Xogot, or Godot. I say Xogot is too much. I'm going to have to pop out of this, and I'm going to start with this project. Let me bring it to the right window. All right. Can I make this bigger? Make stuff bigger. All right, so this is just a very simple project. Well, it's not that simple, but it's a template I started from. It's a multiplayer FPS template. I just went into the Godot asset store and looked for the most recent multiplayer template. And as of last week, it was this. So that's how I picked this one, and it works. So actually, before I do the UDP, let's start with the first one, and we'll just run. Oh, no, I'm going to start with the UDP. I don't want to type in IP addresses. All right. So even before the first bit of code I changed, I jumped straight in, and let me bring the right VS Code over to this window. Sorry, I'm a VS Code person. We see? Nice and good? All right. So first thing I did, and I don't know, if any of you guys have been doing multiplayer code inside of Godot, the first thing I ever do is go into customize run instances, and I change it to 2. And then I add client and I add host. And I normally do dash dash, right? So I add these launch arguments for client and host. And now when I run this, it's going to pop up 2 instances. However, it's not going to do it automatically. So I add this little setup initial stuff. And I say, hey, if there's an arg that has host or there's an arg that has client, just click the button for me. This saves so much time. All right. So now if I press play, I'm going to get 2 Godot windows, and one of them, it's going. Anytime now, right? Okay. I normally do the host first, actually, instead of the client. Okay, this one connected, and the other one did not. Oh, no, now they're both connected. And I get to do mouse on both, so I'm really elite like that. All right, but either way, I didn't actually have to go in and change it. So to do that, this code is very simple. What I do is you'll set up UDPs. You actually don't have to do it client and server. You can use the same UDP peer for both because If you're the server, you don't need to listen, so you can just shut it down. But just to keep it clean, keep it simple, have both. And it's really, so there's a couple different things in Godot. There's a UPnP that I've seen that this template actually had implemented, but they didn't do it right and it wasn't done. That is a network locking stack. I mean, it locks the call stack. So if you use that, you have to do threading and it's complicated and people don't always do it right. Where the UDP, it just works asynchronously because we're just gonna every update ask if there's a new one. So what you do is, in this instance, I say, whenever we start, if you just start listening for other UDP clients. If you click host, I say start broadcasting, saying, hey, I'm a server. And as soon as they find one, I jump over to, it's at the bottom. All right, set up broadcast info. I say if we're a server, we're gonna set up a new peer. We're gonna broadcast to the entire network so everyone can hear it. And I have a port hard-coded up there, set a timer to spit that thing out. And what I send out is I send the broadcast message, my IP address. Pretty straightforward. And I do have a get local IP address. And in this case, I was being lame and I did filter it by local networks. You can send over all of them and then just have them ping each of them to see if they exist. That also works, but I don't know, really easy code. So all we're doing is, okay, if it starts with 192.10 or 172, it's probably local network. We'll just go with that. Demo code, you know. So that works really well. And as soon as one finds it, so if we're listening, as soon as it finds it, it is up here in this. What we do is I will automatically split it, and then I just set it to the entry. Honestly, when I should have ran that, I should have only ran one of those as host. Let's go back to that. And I should have just said you are, because we didn't get to see it working. That's why the one hung. On this one, instead of saying client, if I'll just leave one as host, we'll watch this time when I run, if I restart those two, one of them will automatically be the host, and the other one just filled out the IP address with 10.60. Whatever. You could do a game picker, so the server list of, hey, here's all the ones we found on your network, but you get the idea. All right, so now we have UDP working. We can work internally on a network, and everything is beautiful. What now? I'm going to say, have you tried doing UDP? So like I mentioned, it only works on the same network. You want to play with your friend who's farther away, right? No, most people aren't sitting in the same house, same network. Jumped a slide faster than I wanted, but this will work. So what we want to do is we want to make a way for you to network traverse, do some NAT traversal so you can connect your house to someone else's house. Well, there's firewalls. There's NATs, the routers. There's a big mess as to what's going on. Now, the way to do this is you would use, it's called NAT traversal, and there's WebRTC is what I'm going to be using. WebRTC has NAT traversal stuff built right in. Godot supports it really, really, really well. Now, what this does is it's a protocol. In a nutshell, if you're the server, you contact some other server, and you say, I am here, I'm a server. And in this instance, we're going to do, a lot of you guys have played those games. Jackbox games are a great example of it, where you join and then you get a join code. That is doing this NAT traversal stuff. So in this instance, what we're going to do is we'll set up a little Node.js service. You can run it on a little service, super cheap, run it for like $5 a month, and it'll probably handle any of the traffic you guys need to handle. If it doesn't, you're in business and go buy a bigger server. So, but yeah, just do a really cheap hosting, like $5 a month. You can host a little NAT server. We'll look at, or a little Node.js server. We'll look at that. There's a Godot version. You can run it in a Godot server somewhere if you want it. However you want to run it, it's easy. So what it does is the server is going to say, hey, I need to start one server. The Node.js is going to reply and say, okay, here's your code. And during that exchange, it's going to say, here are all of my IP addresses. Here's everywhere you can possibly get a hold of me. And then a client is going to say, hey, I've got this join code. And it's going to send it. And then it's going to send back and say, here are all of those IP addresses. Go connect. And if it can't connect, the next step is you then start looking at things like a turn server. Google actually runs one of those for free that you can tie into and use. So the sample code is going to be pointing to that. So that's like say, absolutely, I cannot connect. We can't figure each other out. Now they both jump down and talk to the Google server, and the Google server will actually relay that traffic for you. And it sounds really complicated, but it's actually really, really easy. There's a sample of this inside the Godot demos, but I grabbed the relevant code and I added it into here. And actually, I got one other thing. This is actually a diagram of that actually working, of them all trying to talk to each other, and if not, how they bounce around and will eventually be able to connect. So leave that up for a second. But yeah, it allows them to connect bypassing firewalls, and it's not a lot of work for you. And this is where you're still doing a local peer as a server. So if you're only doing like 4 or 5 people in a multiplayer game, less than 10, you're probably going to get fine with even an iPad host. If you're even on an iPad, the iPad being the host and everyone joining for it. This is how Roblox works. And Roblox, I don't know what their caps are on the local iPad servers, but I've seen like 10 kids all in the same server, and none of them complain. So you can probably get away with it for quite a while in this thing. All right, so let's jump into the code and see how this works. Let me find the right one again, bring it up here. WebRTC, perfect. Let me stop these instances because, precious resources. And I'll close that one, get it out of the way. See how many Godot instances I can have running at once. All right, so this is the same project. I started with the ending. If we have the UDP, if we go back to that world, it opens up here. Oh, no, wrong. Let me close this one. Again, too many VS codes. Bring this one over. Here we go. All right, same exact project. What I've done is I've done a little bit of code ahead of time where I've changed it, and I've added a room code label. And we'll go look at the UI where I added that and how that works. So we had a room code label. And inside of here, I didn't remove the eNet peer. I could have deleted it. I'm not using it anymore. The UDP stuff is still there. Technically, that's not even really needed for this. But I like to, when I build my multiplayer games, I like to allow the different stages, because if someone's in a cabin in the woods and they want to play their game together on their phones, why not let them? So I still keep that stuff in there because that stuff does not need the internet and will still work offline. All right. So now, when we click the host button, I've added a new function to this, connect to WebRTC. One has a code, one does not. If you don't have a code, you're the server. If you have a code, you're trying to join a server. Pretty straightforward. And in this case, all we're going to do is we are going to actually connect to localhost 5050. That is what oh, sorry, I didn't make this one bigger. And that is where we're going to connect to a little Node.js server. Let's actually start that, or we can't connect. So I have a terms, can't see that screen. CD, node server, no, server node. Server node, and there's just the server.js in here. Right here, I've already done the npm install because I didn't want to do that on network. But all this does is it keeps a dictionary of codes and then clients that are trying to connect to each other and their data. It's pretty much it. And if you're connecting with that one, it generates a code, spits it out. I did change this code because by default, if you get this from the Godot demos, it gives you like a 16-digit code with uppercase, lowercase, and numbers, and no one wants to type that in. So my code on here is limited to only letters and 4 digits only. So that is one thing I've done differently. So I'll just do, nope, don't type there. Let's do node, do server.js, and now it's listening. So this guy will now reply, and inside of our setup code, we can actually just bring this down again, give us some more space. It's pretty simple. In order to add WebRTC, I did grab these 2 clients from the demo code because it just deals with actually joining and setting. It'll actually set the multiplayer.peer for you. All you have to do is say, hey, go connect to this thing. And I'm going to push all of these code. I have them all broken up into different things in one GitHub repo. I'll push it all up after the talk so people can look at that. But you basically are just saying, yeah, I'm going to join, and it's going to take care of it. It takes care of, hey, I've got an answer. Hey, we're connected. So you just use that code. The other thing that is required is you do need to go download the WebRTC binaries. There's a link to them in the README saying go get that, and you just copy those into your project, and they are right here. So this is the actual lib, and it will actually allow them to connect. You don't need this on the web. Every other platform uses these binaries. So you'll need to add those binaries to your project. But that's it. You add those add those, and then in the world, I think I actually just instantiate the script directly and then add it as and add it. So pretty straightforward to say, hey, when I'm connected, we're this, disconnect, lobby joined. All right, so then in the UI, I went back over, nope, that one. Okay, and so inside of here, all I did was make sure I did it. I went into the game, let's go to local. I went to the options. One thing that I don't like in this menus, and what I personally do in all of my menus, I make everything visible, and then I set the states. On this one, they're like hiding and showing them inside the UI. I set them all visible, and then I hide them all because I like to be able to see them. All right, I did. Okay, so I had a room code label, and it took me forever to realize there's this unique name thing. If you don't use this in all of your options in UI, do it, because then as you move or drag things around, you don't have to rename what the variables are. Lifesaver. I was doing Godot for months before I found that. A lifesaver. All right, so now we can go to our customized run instances. Oh, no, that should not be headless. That's bad. Actually, is it host on this one? Yeah, it's to host, yeah. I was playing with some other stuff, migrating it through the different stages. So we'll get to that, a little preview. All right, so I have 2 instances again. We have one as host. So let's run this. Now, when one of these goes, this one automatically connected. And when you hit escape to get in the options, that code is near impossible to read. 3.7 and 7. So now I can go over to here and just do 3.7 and 7. Click join. Uh-oh, lobby does not exist. This must be, I thought I restarted. Let's restart it. Just be safe. All right. 9G, make sure you make things readable. 9GF4, hit join. All right, yay, it connected. So now we are connected, and the menu's stuck up there because I just unhid it and they didn't hide stuff by default. So that's why our menu's stuck there. But we are now connected and in the same exact game. I actually didn't even run to go find each other to make sure we truly are in the same game. Where's the little... This is really hard with the... Yeah, he's hiding in one of the crates. Maybe the middle crates?
There's one middle crate and then there's 2.
Yep, there he is. And I can't shoot because I'm stuck in a menu. Oh, I can click resume. There we go. So, yay, it works. All right. So let's stop that. All right, so now we've migrated. We've got our local networking working. We get the UDP discovery, so someone can host it locally, someone can click join locally, and it'll automatically connect. Now we have it, okay, we're in different networks. We can do a join code. And the nice thing is, it didn't show that in that graphic, but if you're both on the same local network, like I said, they send all the IPs. So the traffic will only stay on the local network. You're not hitting servers. And also with this Node.js server, the moment they go through and they connect, you say room closed, everyone drops off, and they stay connected. So your server's not even being used for any of that network traffic. Oh, I didn't point out, I did mention the Google stuff, but if we go into that code, like I was saying, the multiplayer, I think the multiplayer code's the one that sets up the Google ICE servers, so that way automatically, like I said, it will fall back and use Google servers if they truly can't connect. It's free, use it. This is all doing networking without really having to invest much in infrastructure. Right now we're sitting at a $5 a month server on Linode or Cloudflare or something like that. So definitely look into this stuff, it's great. Okay, so we've migrated through. We are into it. Things are moving along. Also, if you have questions about anything I've showed, you can raise your hand. I don't mind interruptions as we're going because I'm closing stuff. Yes?
Do you know if the stud server Google has allows for commercial use? I'm guessing not.
I'm not sure. I am not a lawyer, and I'm not going to answer those questions.
Services use their stun servers. Okay. It doesn't do turn. I'm pretty sure that's only stun.
It only does the stun?
Yeah, it only does
okay.
the stun. I don't think it does turn.
You know, so yes, there are some paid stun or turn servers you can use.
Collecting analytics on your companies, you do that though, right?
Yeah. Most of us as indie devs.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I'd rather let them make a little bit off the analytics than me trying to pay for expensive hosting. So when you start looking at that, it gets really expensive. All right, any other questions while we're in here? Okay.
This might be like out of the scope of the talk, but why are mobile connections such a pain in the butt? I didn't know that mobile.
The iOS thing all comes down to privacy. The original versions of the iPhone, there were like no permissions when the App Store first came out. Your contacts, an app could read your entire contact list and any notes you had written about in the contact without any consent. And there was apps who were doing free apps and getting popular, and people were looking at the data traffic, and they were just uploading your contact list.
That's great.
So over time, the iPhone has clamped down. Even starting in I'm doing network discovery on an iPhone is getting worse and worse. If you use our multi-peer connectivity kit, which is not bound in Godot, it just works. If you do Bonjour, it works as long as you specify inside the entitlements you're only using this certain bonjour code. So that stuff will work. But like if you even ask the device its name, so that way when you're broadcasting, you say, "Hey, I'm so-and-so's phone."
Yeah.
It just says iPad or iPhone now.
Yeah.
Like they even hide that information. So over time, the iPhone's been locked down more and more and more. So that's why it's hard.
You also talked about NAT, them being mobile connections being strict NAT. What do you do about that? Like, how do I get somebody like, say I'm like on data and I want to connect to someone's game? How do I?
Honestly, I've had zero issue doing cellular using the game code stuff.
Hell yeah.
It's just worked. At least on mine, I'm on Verizon. I've had zero issues using that.
Yeah, that's true. Then you get
So I can't promise allocarriers, but
T-Mobile, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. But I've had zero issues the moment I've tried using my little server. I can connect, no problem at all. Yes.
You mentioned a demo using the stun and turn server for Godot. Do you know what you would look up to find it?
Yes, I will actually just put that on the screen. That's going to get me ahead of where I want to be, but it's okay. Godot demos. It's Godot-demos, I think. I'll bring it up as soon as I find it. GitHub.com. Okay, I have it. Godot demo projects. Okay, here it comes to this screen. All right, this guy. So inside Godot demo projects on Godot engine, there are projects for WebRTC minimal, signaling, and this will even tell you, hey, go download the latest version of the extension from right here. So it'll give you a link directly to it. And that's where I got those binaries. That's just another project sitting up there. So grab that, you'll need those. All right, any other questions? All right, we will continue on our journey. All right, we already did that code. Next. All right, next step, dedicated servers. Who here's done dedicated servers on games and stuff? A few? Yeah? So let's jump into a little sample again. Oh, actually, I had, nope. Yeah, okay, I didn't have any more slides on that. So one thing about dedicated servers, typically you're gonna have to host it somewhere. You need an actual instance of your game running somewhere on the cloud 24/7 for someone to connect. It's the only way for it to work. We all, I don't know, back in the day with original Counter-Strike, me and my friends got a server hosted and it was so cool. And you did that and you could do that. And there's still games that work that way, where you have a game, can connect 10 to 20 people to it. If it's full, it's full. But you're hosting a server. It's getting a lot easier, especially with like FreeNAS or they don't call it FreeNAS anymore. But using that or like Unraid, you can just say, hey, host this game server on my local server at home. And it just does it. And it works pretty well. But IP address can't change. If you're hosting something at home, you got to deal with dynamic DNS stuff and all kinds of weird things, or else people can't connect. Or pay whatever to host it somewhere in the wild. And there's lots of companies out there. If you want to do that, you can do it yourself, or you can pay a company and they'll host your stuff for you. Now, I wanted to look into how to do some of this with Godot. And what I ended up looking at was, first, let's just jump over into Godot and look at, come on, give me my mouse. Is it this one? All right, bringing the right one back. Let's close this so I'm not using the wrong one. Okay, there it goes. All right, so now let's bring this Godot up to the right window. I spent this morning renaming all of the projects so I knew which they were, because they were all the exact same multiplayer SPS template. Like, that is not going to work well. All right, so for dedicated server, one of the things that I definitely do to test that, and it's a little confusing in here, so if we go into here and we add to, if you do like host, or I actually name mine server instead of host when I'm doing these, I always do, and then headless, right? If you add this headless in here, when I click run this time, it's going to be different, because we're only going to get one window. One of them is running headless, no window. And that's my game server. And so this one I can actually join the same way. I don't know if this one, I actually reverted back, so this one actually doesn't have UDP anymore. I should have kept it because you don't want UDP on your main server. That's kind of weird. So I actually just disabled the UDP on this, so that's actually going to be hard to connect to. Localhost should work, I'd hope. But either way, so it's really easy. You add -- headless, and now Godot is going to run. It's going to run a lot less resources because it's not rendering the UI. It's just doing all the things in the back end. The physics are all still going to run. All the networking code, all your GD scripts are going to run. It's going to instantiate nodes, but it's not drawing. So it actually uses a lot less resources. Now, as soon as we get into that, what I tend to do is I like to do Docker. Docker, not everyone loves, but it's pretty straightforward to then at that point say, because you've got to run this server somewhere. In Godot, I found it actually really easy, wrong window, to go in and add Docker support. All I did was I added this is code from my actual game. This is actually part of my build scripts for my own game I'm working on. What I do is, this is a Docker file. What I do is, it's actually kind of funny how I run it. We'll talk about that later. But I build and put the current server into this folder, current server. And then I run this Docker file, Docker compose. Actually, if you really want, we can actually look at that exact script. It is this one. I'll actually run Docker compose. Now, I always optimize for having, this is all from my home lab, right? Like I said, professional prototyper, not a game releaser. So most of my games never make it to the wild. So running stuff on my own little Docker is fine. I actually don't want to push it to a container registry or pay for that because it's just for my own enjoyment. So in this instance, I'm actually building the Docker. I copy the game over to the machine that's going to be running the Docker container. And I just run Docker build. And then push this, that's actually not the game Scalable, it's not the right one, but you get the idea. Push this to the local Docker container, and then all I have to do is say, Docker, run this thing. And this little guy runs. And it's, all it is build one for Ubuntu, install the stuff we'll need, copy the app over, and then run a script, and all it's saying is, run my Linux version of my game. And now my game server, oh, and of course, don't forget to expose your ports. Things won't work if you don't do that. So that's it. Now I have a Docker version, and I can run it on Docker desktop on my Mac, Windows, doesn't matter where. That Linux container is just going to run. Yes?
You have to like compile like the whole game.
Yeah, so what I did first, and actually do I have my game open? I do have my game open. So I have, one thing that I really don't like about Godot is the git ignore by default excludes your export templates. Which is like, why? Yeah, so either way, I add my template. So I actually have Linux server.
Nice.
That's it. And so now my build, we'll look at my build scripts later because like I said, the goal of this talk is just migrate through the different levels of networking and where we want to end up and where we're going. So we'll show farther about what I'm doing because I'm doing even more than just Docker. But this thing just builds, spits out that VR game show x86 64. That's what we were seeing at launch. So it's just standard Linux export, and I pass in headless. But it's actually it's the same exact as, well, the Linux version runs VR, so I actually have some flags to throw in VR. But aside from that, it's basically the same thing. All right, so we've got this thing. It's now able to run in Docker. We can do our own little self-hosting thing. Like I said, it goes back like it was with Counter-Strike. You get like one server with this. You throw Docker up, you've got one server, 10 people can connect. You can do all kinds of things with DNS to put things through paths or however you want to handle it. But either way, it's kind of hard. You've got one IP address, different ports, but it's a little bit complicated to deal with this. And how do you maintain a server list? How do you update that server list? You now need more server infrastructure to send that data back and forth. How do you handle that? Oh, let's jump back to the slides. Oh, wait, I already did that one. Okay, so now what? Pain. It's the only way to describe what comes next. This is not the only option. There are paid options. W4, I know, does stuff like this. There's whoever Pun used to be and rebranded. They do stuff like this. But I am going to talk about Kubernetes now. Yay. Pain. All right. Some people love it. Some people hate it. I'm not using raw Kubernetes for this next little bit. We're going to use a project called Agones. It is from Google. Has anyone heard or used Agones yet? Oh, I saw a couple hands. Yes. Okay. So this is a Google project that is built on top of Kubernetes, and it actually hides a lot of the nastiness because it's really designed around game servers and hosting your game servers. It autoscales. It runs anywhere you want. You don't have to run it on Google Cloud. You can run it on Amazon, Azure. I'm running it on a little $200 N300 NUC. And I can run multiple game instances of my game. I've had up to 10 with no lag or issues, and it's this little tiny nook. So you can run it anywhere you want. That's just running Ubuntu, and it runs all my stuff. All right, and you do have to kind of deal with some matchmaking stuff. You're going to have to use a matchmaking server of some sort to use this. And we can even look at what I did. The game I'm working on, I'll show it when we get going. But it is, the one I'm currently working on is a VR version, probably closest things like Gorilla Tag and Fall Guys mixed together. Your obstacle courses, you can punch each other, push each other off the edge, and just run through an obstacle course in VR. So. But since it's that kind of battle royale style, the servers just stand up, go away, stand up, go away. As soon as people are off, the servers recycle or is deleted. I don't even recycle. I just say kill that server and it just recycles them and keeps them going. So we'll look at how that kind of stuff works. But let's look at Agones. Told you, pain. This is complicated, right? There's a lot going on. It looks hard. That's because there's a lot going on, but it's not that hard to set up. Unfortunately, it's all done via YAML files. Yay, YAML. But yeah, this is the architecture. So there's a couple different things that are going on. There's going to be the allocators, which deal with making sure there's enough things. There's some of the DNS stuff that comes in, so that way, based on either subdomain or path, it knows how to direct you to the right Docker instance in Kubernetes, and it just goes through it. Mine's using Docker under the hood. I'm just doing it I'm using Minikube on my little Ubuntu machine, and it is just doing Docker under the hood. I copy the files over, push the local thing, and it just goes. So I'll actually show you my YAML files and the deployment so we can actually see a little bit more into how this thing goes. But like I said, it automatically deals with scaling up or scaling down. Some of the settings you can set are, for mine, I say I always want one server with nobody in it. And so if there's one going and there's a game going, it actually moves that from the pool. If there's a game in a lobby, that one counts as in the pool until it's full. And then it'll always keep one extra just sitting there. So that way I don't have to wait for them to spin up. They spin up fast. So I don't even need to do that, but it was just easy to code that way. And you can do, hey, I always want 10 servers that are not full. You can say that. I just want some that are not full, or I want this number based on load. And it'll automatically scale up and scale down. You can let them deal with it, or you can write your own code to deal with it. I opted for my own code to deal with it because it was like 20 lines of code. All right, so you also will need to jump into your own code inside of, you need to add code inside of your game to talk to Agones to make this work well. You don't have to. I highly recommend it. Basically, what this does is it enables whenever someone joins, you tell them they does, so that way the server knows the accurate player count, and also if the game's still alive. You send it a heartbeat. I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. And then in my case, when everyone leaves or the game's over, I send a shutdown command so it turns itself off. But it allows the orchestrator to know what to do or what state this is in. There's a Godot Agones library that you just add in there. It's on GitHub, and it's also in the asset library. You can just add that, and it's really straightforward. All you're doing is you add it. You say, start, game is ready, people can now join me. So that way it knows to start filtering people that way, and then just do the health heartbeat. And you can configure, ignore the heartbeat, or they have to check in at least every 5 seconds, or whatever. It's all configurable. But if it's not getting a heartbeat, it's like, oh, that server's dead, shut it down. Let's get that out of the pool. So it's kind of nice that it has that. All right, let's jump back into the code. Now, this is where I said we'll look at non-sanctioned code. It's my own personal project, so ignore anything you see that is not good. All right, so to do this, like I said, I want to focus on how it's working and kind of the things in there. So what I've done is, actually, let me find the right VS Code. No, it's this one, because I already drug it over. All right, so the way I'm handling this is, like I said, you do have to set up a YAML file. And I have my game server YAML. And it's using Contour for the ingress. This is how it knows how to route things. I'm running this in my home lab. So I have multiple DNS things, dynamic DNS things, because IP address changes, pointing to my house. So it knows how to port things through. And based on what gets passed in, it knows once it hits my network, how to route it through. which is pretty cool. So I've got a couple different things running, but this stuff is running Contour. And I am using WebSockets. I love using the WebSockets, especially we're already using it for the WebRTC stuff. So I continue down that path of just using WebSockets. And I put mine to path. The default is subdomain, but if you're doing SSL, you technically need a new SSL cert per instance, and they'll do it for you. Agones will go through and refresh those, but I think it's dumb. So I tell it just use my game path, my standard subdomain URL / and then whatever the code is at the end, that's telling it how to direct to the right server. So that's why I set mine to path. All right, now when we jump down here, you can say like how many people are allowed in it, things like that. For testing, like I said, I have it locked at like 10 people. But all I'm saying is go use, you'll notice from my old little Docker file on my build, I'm just pushing it to its own little container. You can add a real container registry. If you're doing production, add a real container registry. But home lab, local container registry is good enough for me. Now, you do want to go in and tweak these resources. This is telling it what size, or when it allocates that game instance, how many CPU resources to give it and how much memory. When I first was doing this, I was using the samples on Agones.net or .com, whatever it is, and I used their samples, and it worked for their sample, which was just a ping server. And I'm like, oh, this was great, it's working. And then I went over and I tried doing it with my game, and I'm like, it's just cycling and cycling and cycling these servers. No output, no anything, because it's just recycling everything, deleting them. I finally got into the right logs. It just didn't have enough memory. It was out of memory because they had such a low limit. So you'll want to tweak these if your game servers are instantly disappearing and you know your game can run in Docker anywhere else. Go check those things. You've got to adjust your, and yeah, I said up to 2 gigs per instance. So just make sure you check those type of things, or it is very, very painful. Now, why not show you all the dirty secrets if we're talking about it? So this is my GitHub YAML. What I do is I actually have a couple Mac Minis sitting on my desk, and those are my build servers. They're tied into GitHub Actions, and what they do is if we jump down to the server, Linux server build, it's pretty straightforward. I am just running. I do 100% do all the cache your stuff. I don't cache to GitHub because you blow through your data limits like instantly. So I do the local caching. There's a local caching GitHub action. Use that. It'll use a network drive or a local drive, so that way all your builds will cache the resources, and it cuts your build times to nothing. So I even have mine set to a 5-minute timeout, because if it's been sitting there and trying to build for 5 minutes, and this game is like 3 gigs as I'm copying of like assets and code and all that, so it's a pretty decent compile time, and yeah, I have it capped at 5 minutes on this thing. So export it. After that, I run some fancy commands. I SCP it over to my server. I just have SSHs installed on my machine because home lab, don't do this in production, but this is because I didn't want to have a container registry. And then I actually just run those commands on my little Nook. And I just build it and tell it to set up the server and turn the API back on, and off we go. It's pretty easy to do these type of things for home labs. Again, grow your infrastructure with your company, but when you're in these early stages and you're working on stuff, do the cheats, the shortcuts. Spending all the time to figure out how to do it right, you'll never get to code. So steal some cheats, it works. All right, and that's it for there. So as I was saying, what you can do is you do have the opportunity to control what Agones is gonna do. I don't know if it's in this project, it might be. You know what it calls this setup API? I have a .NET C# web API that is sitting there next to the game server. And the game server YAML probably had that, or I closed it. Where when I'm setting up the infrastructure, it uses the, is it not in that file? I thought it was in that file. One of the files tells it, it's the one that's on the server, because that's not part of the actual game server. But what it does is it tells it to ping my own little local service, and it just says, hey, do we need anything else? And it does that like every 30 seconds is the default. It just pings and says, hey, are we good? And then I just go through and I ask the server, well, how many instances do we have? How many have people in it? How many don't? And then I say, okay, this is the new target number. And I just return and say, hey, I should have 10 servers or 5 servers or whatever. And then it automatically scales them up and down. And also on my server stuff, I don't know if you noticed that when we were looking at it, I am really lame. Oh, so there's where it pushes the data. I actually just go into Kubernetes and tell it to delete everything. And then Agones is like, hey, we have no instances. And it just rebuilds it all. So that's how I first forced my server upgrade. Agones will actually do server upgrades properly for you. But again, this is my home lab. I just want to test it right away. I don't want to wait for things to cycle. And because of the way I do things, I'd have to then go and write code to shut down the one sitting there with nobody in it. Because if not, I'll connect the wrong game code. Whereas if it's doing it and there's no one in it, and depending on how you set it, it'll automatically refresh those. So the other people playing don't, but I just tell it, kick everyone out, reset up the servers. So pretty straightforward there. All right, any questions so far? I know that stuff is really complicated. I probably talked way too fast. All right, so we're getting towards the end. I think that was the bulk of what I wanted to show on the Agones stuff. There's one other thing I want to talk about. I didn't write a note on it, so now I'm forgetting what it was. But, oh, right. We talked about setting up Agones and all that, but we didn't actually show connecting to it from the game, right? We also had to write some game code. So let me jump back over to Godot, and I'll bring this up here. And we'll actually, I should be able to connect to my little nook at my home server. Should being the keyword. So if I go to my main, yep, pop to the right screen. Inside of here, now what I do, since mine is Battle Royale style, I didn't want to do proper matchmaking because I'm also in early stages. And so let's go to, what is it? All right, so inside of here, I have a thing that says request game URL. Now, all this does is this is that same exact .NET local API running on my little machine. And it says, hey, I need a game. And at that point, you can query all of your game server instances. You can tag each of these. Hey, this is for higher level people, or this is for beginners who have never played any games. And so you can actually query all of your running servers and say what tags they have, or do they have this value with that. So I can say, okay, I'm looking for somebody who's put over 50 hours in my game. Let's find those servers, so I pair those people together. Not hard to write that code. But in this case, I say, hey, I need a server. So it finds one that has room and has not started a round. And all that does is I am just saying, hey, grab that. And I don't even return JSON. I just return the string of the code because I didn't even want to have to deal with parsing JSON. So it just returns, here's a code for you. And then to join the game, all it does is it just does, and I am using WebSockets Secure. I am actually doing that because, like I said, it does it automatically for you. And all I say is, hey, go now join this path. I'm saying it's a multi-socket peer and connect, and I pass it that game path. Now, multiplayer peer. You'll notice that as we've been going, we haven't had to change any of our actual networking code. All we've done is change how they're connecting. So you don't have to be scared of how some of these things work. It's just really changing a couple things. All right, so I'm going to run this, and as you can tell, I don't have VR on. So I do have a little pond that works. And again, my thing tells it just to connect because I hate even clicking the connect button. All right, so I'm just going to click I'm ready. And then I'm connected to Alaska from here, and everything works well. Let me reboot. That's a lame label. Yeah, thank you. And we should get a brand new server just by restarting. We'll know because it'll be a different level. New level. See, so I get a brand new server, and those servers, I don't think I could actually refresh fast enough to deplete my one extra server because it can actually just reinstantiate them that fast. So really easy, not much code, and just keeps building things. So there we go. All right. Thank you, everyone. And any questions? Yes.
From your experience, do you need UDP reliability if it's just like a local network session?
Well, UDP is not, or you're talking for like the UDP broadcasting or
Yeah,
UDP?
like, do you need to build a reliability layer if you're just doing a local
No. So the way I do all of my networking, and this is just coming from me, and this goes back to, like I said, this not the stuff the other guys talked about. But when I do my networking, I actually don't send stuff very often. Even in VR, I limit how much data I send and how often, and I alert between. even if hand motion, if you're just lerping and you're sending something, you don't have to send an update every frame. You really don't. If you're doing that and you're sending too much data, you're going to kill the bandwidth and destroy it. If you watch, I mean, back in the day, I used to like tether from a phone and play World of Warcraft. You watch the amount of data they're sending, it's next to nothing. You should do a lot of things like, yeah, lerp on the client. You should do that stuff. So things don't have to be exact. If you're using a first-person shooter, though, that's different rules than if you're doing something else, because people get really mad about things there. So it's also you need to like tweak it to your game. But even in that instance, most things don't need to be networked. Like the box that you're shooting and destroying, or the bullet holes. I'm sorry, you don't need to actually shooting people, yes, but the boxes, no. So it's up to you, like what level and how much you can get away with. Tweak your game code, but you can't. I mean, it's hard to say what's right, what's not. Every game's gonna be different, but yeah, I mean, if you miss a frame here or there, most of the time it's going to be fine. People have network issues anyway. I do UDP or WebSockets and stuff like that rather than TCP. You can miss some frames. I'd rather miss some frames than watch the weird jank of things trying to catch up. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That was fun.